Peace, what's going on, y'all? I'm here today to talk about a few things. Every time I get on any video and I start talking, or I do any event and I start talking, I'm always told, oh man, he goes so deep in those big words, and I wish he took more time and get more in detail. It's like, that's not what I'm here for. There's a lot of people out there that speak on health and they keep things real simple. You know what I'm saying? So you got to deal with those people that keep it real simple first and then come my way. Because I personally don't think that I'm complicated like that. I think I keep things basic, but I guess it's based on the viewer. It's based on the individual. So I was going to start with something simple today and then get into a little bit more, but I want to get into water. I want to talk about water because we live on a water planet. I don't know if people understand that. Like we think that it's a bunch of land with water on it when it's really the other way around. Like we're on a water world that has little pockets of dust here and there. And the way that you can verify that is when you look at all the organisms, look at all the cells, look at us, and what you're going to find out. When you look at all the cells, you're going to find out that we're 99% water. So if we're mainly water, if the cell is mainly water, if the environment, if the mother that we live on is mainly water, if we're developing inside of a womb where it's mainly water, when the only sign that people know that a woman is about to give birth is the fact that their water breaks. Like everywhere we look, water is of relevance. If you go to any indigenous society and ask them what's of value to them, they will point to the sky and say rain. They will point to the river and say the current of that flow, because that's how they get their fish. That's how they get their seafood. The rain is how they're able to properly water all of their crops. This is how we stay clean. Imagine staying hygienic, staying clean, getting that dirt and that funk up off you without no water present. Imagine exercising and working out and not sweating so that you can cool yourself. Imagine being hit by a very traumatic and emotional situation and not having the ability to cry and let tears come down your face. Imagine there was no water. And I'll leave it on this one for all the fellas out there. Imagine women were not able to produce a certain amount of water in a given situation. You know what I'm saying? That would make things a lot more difficult, So water is very, very important, and we have to take our time and focus on it. And I think because it's in such abundance, because it's everywhere, it rains from the sky. You go to the beach and it's as far as the eye can see. You go to the store, it's bottled up gallon by gallon in rows. I think because we see of it so much in abundance, we don't see the value in it. If you went to a beach and you replaced every grain of sand with crystals and gemstones and precious stones, eventually the value of those precious stones won't be so precious no more. If you know what I'm saying. And if you go to certain societies, indigenous societies, where they do have a lot of precious stones and things like that in excess, I'm not going to say they don't know the value of it in regards to monetary, dollar amount. They might not be on that, but they understand the energy dynamic and the value of it in that sense. So because we have so much water everywhere, because it's easily accessible, because it comes out of your body, imagine not being able to urinate. How about that one? Imagine not having enough water in your bowels to be able to pass, all of your waste out. The lubrication necessary, water plays a very, very important role in our body. And we're going to start with some of its most basic components. So water is H2O. Okay. H2O. What does the H stand for? The H stands for hydrogen. All right. And the 2 denotes that there's 2 of them. If there was a 2 after the O, then it would represent 2 of what the O represents. But because the 2 comes after the H, that means it's 2 hydrogens. Then it's followed by an O. There's no number, so that means it's just one of them. And that O represents oxygen. Okay, so I usually tell people to think about the Mickey Mouse sign. The big circle with the 2 Mickey Mouse ears on top. The large circle is represent oxygen. The 2 little ears are represent hydrogen. Now, hydrogen has a charge and oxygen has a charge. And what do I mean by charge? I'm talking about some type of potential. Just if I could make an analogy, think of a magnet. And when you think of the average bar magnet, it has 2 ends. It has a north side and it has a south side, kind of like how cities are set up, right? You got the north side, you got the south side. Now, if you take 2 bar magnets and you put 2 north sides together, what's going to end up happening? They're going to end up repelling each other. I used to love it when I was a kid. You know what I'm saying? I used to sit there with the magnets, sit one there, get the other one, and then start pushing it. You know what I'm saying? With that invisible force, which is that's another force. That's another frequency. That's another thing that exists that we're not able to see with our eyes, but we see the effects of it. Now, if you switch it and you put the south end to the north end, now you have those 2 ends attracting each other because you have opposite charges attracting one another. Well, it's the same thing with this water molecule. The hydrogens have a positive charge on them. The oxygen has a negative charge on them. And the reason why one atom might have a positive charge while another one has a negative charge is because it's trying to tell you what's going on in the nucleus. So when you look at an atom has a core, it has a nucleus, it has a heart to it. And the heart is where the proton and the neutron resides at. They stay at the core. Now, the thing that's zipping all around it, like a satellite orbiting around Earth, or like how the moon goes around the Earth, this is the electron. Okay, and the electron has a negative charge and the proton has a positive charge. The neutron, what type of charge you think it got with the term neutron? More than likely neutral. So I want you to think of the pH scale. It has the same dynamics going on. You got the 0 to 6.9 being acid. You got the 7.1 to 14 being alkaline, but then you got the 7 being neutral. So you got negative charge, you got positive charge, and then you have a neutral charge. Yet again, this is the dynamic that powers our whole reality. So when you get an understanding of how negative and positive charges influence one another, resonate with one another, react with one another, then you'll have the basic tenets of alchemy, chemistry, even magic, because magic is just science that you haven't understood yet. You know what I mean? So you got the positive charge, you got the negative charge, right? The reason why an atom is going to have a negative charge is because there's more electrons than there are protons. And because there's more electrons than there are protons, the overall charge is going to be a negative charge. Also, if there's a situation where there's a higher proton count than there's an electron count, now you have a higher positive charge in this particular atom. So now you got a positive charge atom. So in this case, we got the positive charge hydrogens, we got the negative charge oxygen. Now, if you separate the negative charged oxygen from the positive charged hydrogen, now you have 2 separate charges in solution or in water, all right? And if there's more hydrogens concentrated in that water, you're gonna have something acidic. And if you have more, if you have more positive charged hydrogens in the solution, it's acidic. If you have more negative charged oxygens, then you're gonna have an alkaline. All right, so this is how you get the difference between acid and alkaline. Now, this is something that takes it to the next level. When you shine light on water, specifically infrared light. Now, what is infrared light? When you think about the electromagnetic spectrum and the part of it that you're most familiar with, which would be the visible spectrum, you remember it by thinking of the mnemonic or the name Roy G. Biv, like Belle Biv DeVoe. Roy G. Biv. Roy is red, orange, yellow. G is green. Biv is blue, indigo, violet. So that's the color spectrum. The red, the part that's lowest in the red is infrared. The part that's highest in the violet is ultraviolet. So that's the frequency of the visible spectrum. So when we go to the red portion, but specifically the infrared portion, and we are beaming water, such as this glass of water right here, if the red light is hitting this water, what's going to end up happening is all the water that sits close to the surface of this glass, you see how the glass has sides that the water's sitting in, because water is going to always take the form of whatever container you put it in. If this was a sphere, if this was a cone, if this was a box, it don't matter. The water is going to take the form of the container. So wherever the water is meeting or touching the container, it's going to start forming layers. I know y'all like layers. KT, I thought you said this was going to be simple, bro. What are you talking about, layers? Well, the layers that I'm talking about are layers formed by the water molecules. We talked about H2O earlier, okay? Now, what we're talking about now is actually H3O2, all right? Which is the water molecules, they start to align in a hexagonal shape. When I say hexagonal, what does that refer to? What's the root in hexagonal? Hexagon, okay? 6 sides, okay? So the 6 sides hexagonal shape you see in regards to snowflakes. So I want you to think about a fence, a metal fence. And you ever notice when you see a metal fence there, it's a crossing of lines and the negative space has a diamond shape? Well, instead of it having a diamond shape, imagine a fence that has hexagonal shapes going through it. And y'all have seen the hexagonal shapes before. Even if you've been in a bathroom that has kind of the hexagon shaped black and white floors in them, you can see all the little hexagons that make that design up. So the water is forming hexagons, and as they all build, they make a fence, and that fence is the layer. So how many fences does it make? It depends on how much infrared energy is being absorbed by the water, and the water is making fences. It might make 1 fence, then it'll make 2, then it'll be 5, then it'll be 10, then it'll be 15. What makes these fences so amazing is that they're specifically negatively charged. So they're predominantly made from OHs, which are called hydroxyls, which is pretty much 2/3 of the hydrogen molecule. Well, the last third, the remaining hydrogen, gets pushed out. It gets excluded. And this is why these fences and this particular process that's going on is called the exclusion zone, because it's a zone of negative charge and negative energy made from water that's excluding positive charge. Now, not only is protons getting excluded, but any other inorganic solutes in that solution is getting excluded. And what does that mean, solutes? That's talking about toxins, poisons, dust, little pieces, anything else that's in there that's not the water, all that gets pushed out. You know, a good example is when you freeze something in a let's say a plastic bottle, you put a plastic bottle of water in the freezer. When you pull that bottle back out, you'll notice that the edges start to melt first and the center is still frozen. And the reason why is because of the heat and the infrared created closest to the container where the water's meeting at. So that's going to melt first and the center is going to melt last. So that shows it. So water is what you would call a chromophore. Chromo or chrome means color. Okay. So a chromophore represents a receptor or a receiver of light, photons, and color. And the largest, most ambient chromophore that exists in our world would be water. That's why majority of the earth is water. That's why we have clouds in the sky, because it's all meant to absorb electromagnetic energy. Now, what does that mean then? That means that you're able to use light in order to power the human body. Because now water is a battery. Because anytime you separate in negative and positive charges, then you can create an actual current that can flow the negative charge to the positive terminal, like you see with a battery. You ever notice when your battery goes dead in your car, you pop the lid and you gotta go get the two wires? What happens when you put the positive end on the positive terminal or the battery? And you put the negative on the battery. What's going to happen? You're going to get shot. Something's going to pop. Something is going to happen. Naturally, the circumstances of the universe is going to show you ain't doing something right, because there's laws to this. See, a policy that, protocols, policies, statutes, like all of those are temporary. They're not everlasting. There's something that's created. But when you're dealing with a law, laws stand. Do you understand? So in that situation, matter of fact, let me where is my water? It's over there. Get some hydration. This is a quick note to everybody. Lights and electronics dehydrate you. They pull your water out. You ever notice when you up at night late and you on the computer and you doing work, you do a lot of this? You also notice that when you're looking at the computer, you'll tear. You ever notice you'll tear? Yeah, that's that water getting pulled out of you. That's your body telling you water is being drained out of you. So anytime you filming something, or you on the computer, or you playing video games, or you watching TV, or you been on your phone for a while, make sure you got a huge bottle of water by you and you steadily drinking that water. All right. So, you have positive and negative charges separated inside this water, and it's being created by light. Because you have to ask yourself, how is your cells able to do 100,000 chemical reactions a second? Now, when I say chemical reactions, we're just gonna change that term into job. Okay, because all y'all know what a job is. And we talking about like a trade, like a plumber, like a mechanic, you know what I mean? Like an engineer, like people that are getting down and dirty every day. You know what I mean? Shoot, we could even say a custodian, a teacher, it don't matter. Work. Now imagine you going to work and your boss comes to you and you like, okay, I looked at the schedule. I didn't really see, what I got to do today. What's up? And he's like, yo, go to your supervisor. So you go to your supervisor. You're like, all right, John, what is it I'm doing today? And then he whips out this list, and it's 100,000 things you got to do. 100,000. Now, after you able to swallow like the reality of all that work you got to do, then he throws another one at you and say, you got to do it in 1 second. 1 second? So your cells are able to perform 100,000 tasks per second. Shoot, every second you making 2 million red blood cells. That's dynamic in itself. So the only way that you're able to do something that fast is if light is involved, because light is pretty much the thing that we see goes faster than anything else. It moves at 186,000 miles per second. Can you imagine covering 186,000 miles every second that goes by? No, I can't either. Light goes so fast that if you go the speed of light, you'll be able to manipulate time. You can go back. And this is how entheogens come into the mix. For instance, When you're talking about entheogens, when you break that word down, it's a combination of God and plants. So we always talk about God, we talk about the creator, we talk about the heavenly body, we talk about angels, we talk about dimensions, higher orders, higher planes, but we always struggle on how to get there. So some people meditate, some people take on a religion, other people chant. But there's an ancient way of taking the express train. You know, if you live in New York and you got to go all the way to 125th Street and you're in Brooklyn, you're not going to get on the C train. You better not get on that C train. You're going to get on the A train because that's the express. That's the boy that's going to is going to bypass all the unnecessary stops and kind of get you where you need to go. So entheogens is a means of being able to step outside the kind of regimented concrete structure that exists in our reality. You can kind of compare it to the Matrix. You know how the Matrix had everything kind of programmed. And once Neo woke up and got the kiss of life from Trinity, he was able to see all the ones and the zeros, which everything is made up of these ones and these zeros. And when you're able to decode your reality, then you can manipulate the code. You can change the code. You can add to the code. You can put things in and take things out. And entheogens help you with that. Now, Dr. Sebi used to talk about an amazing entheogen. It was also talked about by another elder by the name of Dr. Ando. And the name of this entheogen is called iboga. And iboga has an active ingredient in there, an alkaloid specifically, by the name of ibogaine. Now, iboga is a time machine. It's a time machine, like it's an actual physical, like DeLorean that I step in. I go 88 miles per hour, and Doc and McFly gonna take me back to see my mom's meeting my dad, like for real. But a good example of how iboga works is if you remember a film by the name of Captain America Civil War. It was a Marvel film. I know a lot of y'all seen it. If you didn't see it, your kids seen it. You know what I mean? But in there, Robert Downey Jr., who plays Tony Stark, who is the alter ego of Iron Man, he was presenting to a university. And in his presentation, he was showcasing himself in his youth. So he was about, I don't know, maybe he was 17 years old, 16 years old in the scene. And his parents who were dead at the time, in this scene, they were still alive. So he was actually replaying events that happened when he was a teenager. And his parents were about to leave. This was the last time he was going to see him before he died. And this event of them dying was so traumatic that it affected his growth and his emotion as he got older. So he decided that, okay, if I can go back to that place where all of this happened, maybe I can notice certain events and certain clues and do something about it. And if I do something in the past, then the present is automatically changed. Because y'all seen enough of those movies where cats go back in the day in the time machine, they shoot a baby that one day is going to grow up to be some type of killer. And then when they return back to their regular time, there's a whole different world, because not only did that person that they prevented from growing up never grew up, so that didn't happen. It's a nonlinear effect. It's a butterfly effect, meaning everything that person impacted during the course of his life never happened. So you'll be surprised at how different the world could be just from taking away one person. And we're dealing with a time right now where a lot of people have transcended, and we don't know what impact these people would have had on the world, but they're no longer here. And because they're no longer here, now we're going to deal with a world that's going to be affected by their loss and their transition. So the name of the program in the movie was called BARF. It was called, I think it was binary augmented retroframing. In other words, he was saying he's using computer software in order to retrograde or go back and observe frames, picture frames, because if you do 24 frames a second, you have an animation. That's what, when you looked at Looney Tunes back in the day, Wile E. Coyote, Bugs Bunny and all of that, those were pictures that were painted, and it was 24 pictures showing a character in different poses. And then when they would film, take a shot of each one of those 24 pictures, they would put it together and let it play. And now it would look like Bugs Bunny was coming out his hole, chewing his carrot, talking about "What's up, Doc?" But in order for them to make that, it was per second now. Now, a cartoon is 24 frames a second. The cell is 100,000 chemical reactions a second. And for you to have 24 frames a second, our brain doesn't pick up 24 frames a second. I think our brain might pick up about 12 or 16. So if I wanted to, create an inception, meaning like place something in your mind without you visually noticing it, then the only thing I have to do is place a frame in between all the other frames. What am I talking about? Okay, let's say I paint these 24 frames, right, to make this cartoon. And instead of one of the frames where Bugs Bunny's foot is slightly moving forward, I pull that out. And instead, I put a butt naked woman up in there, like your type of butt naked woman, you know, or a butt naked man for the sisters out there, your type, right? I slide it right up in there. Now, when you look at this second that passes by, you looking at Bugs, but you get stimulated. And you don't know why you're getting stimulated looking at Bugs Bunny. You like, wait a minute, am I into rabbits? Something like that. Like, what's going on, man? Have I been like off the scene that long? You know what I mean? So what it is your subconscious doesn't miss that frame. Your subconscious picks up every frame per second, but your conscious mind does not. So because your subconscious is able to pick it up, your body reacts to it as though you observed it. And if you see a nude woman that you're attracted to, you're going to get aroused. Your chemicals are going to start flowing. Things are going to happen to your body. So this same thing is going to happen because that picture got spliced up in there. And that happens in movies a lot. It happens in movies a great deal. If you look at how televisions work, it'll blow your mind. And I'm not even going to get into the cathode ray tube. I'm going to get into just what happens with the screen. When you look at a television screen and a picture shows up, the picture shows up as a scan. The whole screen is made up of all these little pixels. All right. It might be 10 million of them on your screen. You don't see that because at the back of the screen there's a black piece, a black square that makes sure that, you know, every negative space is dark. It's black. There's nothing reflected. So you got these 10 million pixels, right? So what happens is when the signal comes to your TV of whatever you're watching, it's in it's as a signal. It's an electromagnetic signal. The television picks it up and then it starts recreating the electromagnetic signal, but now they recreate it in picture form because every color and every one of the things that make that picture up has a representation in signal form. So what's going to happen is going to hit the screen, a light, and it's going to scan from left to right, just like a typewriter. You typing across the paper. It's going to go from left to right. Each line of those 10 million pixels. And then it does it line by line, and it comes all the way down to the bottom of the screen. Every single frame that you see when you're watching television does this. But remember, light moves 186,000 miles per second, meaning light can do a lot of stuff before you notice it's happening. So if you take a slow motion camera and film your TV, you'll see it. You'll see each line coming up on the screen one by one, all the way till it gets to the bottom. And then you'll see this whole thing appear. And every second that passes by that you're watching TV, that happens. Now, you don't know how much that affects your brain, that scanning, and how it's dropping down. You're looking at a lot of light play that's happening, meaning I can put in a subliminal message in the pixels, a shape. You know, I can put sigils, geometrical patterns, things that affect your subconscious, affect your hormones, affect all of your nervous system, and you will never know, you will never pick it up. So what Iboga does is Iboga affects your hippocampus and your amygdala. These are parts of your limbic system in your brain. This is where your emotions and where your memories are stored at, because memories, emotions, and smell are intertwined. Because if I cook up something real nice that has spices and seasonings in it, reminiscent of what your mama cooked when you was like 6, 7 years old, when I lift that top up and all them fumes come out and you take a whiff, it will take you back to when you were 6, 7 years old. You're going to say it. You're going to be like, man, this smell like what my moms used to make when I was like 7 years old. And you're going to start thinking about playing tag outside, and you're going to think about playing with toys and Legos and Saturday morning cartoons. You're going to think about class and book bags and old school. All that's going to flood back in. Why? Because of the smell. Because of the emotion that you're feeling. So they're interconnected in your limbic system, in your brain. So what the Iboga does is, let's say that a young woman was molested when she was younger, let's say by an uncle or something like that, right? So let's say that they were even lied to. They were told that, you know, nothing never happened. And it was, you know, it was always in the back of their mind. So, you know that you ended up going over your auntie's house. You know what I'm saying? So you go over your auntie's house and, you know, you stay over there. And then what ends up happening is, you know, this uncle, this male figure that's in this household takes advantage of this young lady, right? This lady carries this trauma with her whole life. She has difficulty in relationships with men. She doesn't know how to open up and relax. This forces her to go through a lot of relationships because she can never really connect, because in her emotion, lodged in her soul, is the fact that she was tainted at such a young age, and she was never able to properly develop because her growth was stunted based on her light being taken advantage of. Her jobs suffered. Her relationships suffered. Her education suffered. She suffered, right? So in her mind, she would say a million times, I would give anything to go back to that point so I could do something about it. Because at that time, at that age, I couldn't do anything about it. So what Iboga will do is Iboga will take you back to that period in question. And when it was time for you to go over your aunt's house, you make the conscious choice, I'm not going over a house this weekend. And you never go. And because you never went over your auntie's house, every event that followed that never happened. So when you come back out of your experience, it's as if you never experienced it, like that never affected you, and you're this brand new person. Now, Iboga is very strong, and I would not suggest any of y'all to just take what I'm saying and go out and try and find Iboga and you just start taking it, because if you take too much, you will die. This is a ritual. This is something where griots, jolly kundas, shamans, elders from a community that has been doing this for generations should be overseeing this. You need people looking at you, watching you, observing you, and based on what you're dealing with, being able to tell you how much you need to take and not take. This is nothing you take by yourself at home, okay? It's not Just like if you ran into a time machine in an alley and you jump in there, it sounds like a good idea at first when you jump in there. But bro, maybe you can't work the controls and you end up with the damn dinosaurs. Maybe you end up on Earth before there was any oxygen. And you get there and you just suffocate when you get out that mug. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know where you going. You know, you might end up in the room when your mom and dad were making you. I don't think you want to see that, you know? So it's like, I say all that to say that, like, you don't know, like, what door you're really opening. So just like it's not a good idea to just jump into some time machine, you know what I mean? It's not a good job to just take on an entheogen all on your own. Now, mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms will give you a similar experience depending upon your dosage and what strand of shrooms you're dealing with, because the potency of the psilocybin has everything to do with it. And it could do anything from, you know, time travel to cosmic travel to dimensional jumping, you know, all of that, because we have to understand that this experience that we live in is not the only experience. And if you don't want to believe me on that, that's fine, but it's true. And the way to validate its truth is the fact that majority of y'all go to sleep at night, and if you're relatively healthy, you dream. That's another world. I don't care what anybody says. That's another dimension. That's almost like you're in television or you're in movies. You know, you have other situations where you might be meditating and you go somewhere. OK, you might go to school. You'll go to work. You'll go visit your parents. You'll go over your mate's house. And each location you go to is a different environment. It asks for a different type of attention from you, and they're all different worlds. You're not going to act the same over your parents' house as you're going to do with your spouse, as you're going to do in school, as you're going to do in work. You're like 6 different people right there. And if a psychiatrist was looking at you, they'll say you were schizophrenic. But the reality is that we are multifaceted beings. OK, and we live in different worlds. Shoot, we deal with people all the time that's in a different universe than you are. The information I'm speaking right now is hyperdimensional. You can't take this video and just show it to anybody and that person is going to be able to digest it and be like, oh, man, yeah, this is where it's at. No, they're going to be like, oh, this nigga is crazy. And he got an afro. Anybody tell him that it's 2020 right now? Like the 70s was 50 years ago. Oh, I get it. He jumped in the time machine without checking. That's what ended up happening. He jumped in that time machine. That's why he talk about this stuff. Now, in order for all of these things to happen, water has to be present. Water is the medium of them all. If you look at any film that deals with going back in time or going through portals or anything like that, water is always present. Sometimes literally they're walking through water itself. You know, most portals I've seen through special effects, they recreate the look of water because water is multifaceted. Water holds memory inside. Now, what do you mean water holds memory? Well, if water is H2O and you have the ability for all these water molecules to bind with one molecule, detach, bond to another water molecule, detach. I got 3 water molecules bound over here. I got 8 water molecules bound over here. I got 2 water molecules bound over here. I got 15 water molecules bound over here. Each one of those groups that are bound together, they have their own electric signature. They got their own little charge. They got their own resonance, their own vibration, their own geometry, their own shape. And they represent something similar to like the letter A or the number 1. And then other connections and other groups would denote the letter B and the number 2. You know, because A, B, C, D, E, F, G, those letters are there to distinguish one from another. And when you put them together, you can make words. And then you can put words together and make sentences. You can put sentences together and make paragraphs. You could paragraphs together and you can make a whole book. OK? Numbers is the same thing. You could put numbers together and create bigger numbers. smaller numbers. You start moving decibels around, you start adding zeros. You know, they could represent coordinates. They could represent temperatures. It's a means of measurement. So water has the ability to recreate that same system that you see in numbers and you see in with the alphabet. You can create that in water. Water has memory. And if you think about it, just think about this. The same water that's flowing through your veins and your arteries right now, that you're sweating, that you're crying, that you're urinating, okay? All this water is the same water that was here 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago. There's water in you that was in a rhinoceros. There's water in you that was in a gorilla. There's water in you that was in a bee. There was water in you that was in a flower. There's water in you that was in a rock. But now it's in you. So everywhere that water went, it was impressed by whatever. Remember, what did I say when I started this off? I said water takes on the form of whatever container it's in. So if water is in a rhinoceros, it will be impressed by that rhinoceros. If water is in an herb like guaco, it's going to be impressed by guaco. If water is in cucumeca, it's going to be impressed by cucumeca. If water is in my afro, it's going to be impressed by this afro. You understand? I know y'all impressed with the afro too, ain't you? Nah, I'm just playing. But the water retains memory everywhere it goes, okay? It's almost like looking at a slug or a snail going down the street. If you see a slug or a snail going down the road, what do you notice is left behind? A slime trail, right? That's how you know where the snail or the slug came from, because it leaves this kind of crystallized dry trail behind it. And you can see, oh, it came from over there, it came from there, it came from there, and this is where it's going. Well, water has that same slime trail in it based on everything it was impressed by. All right. So that means that with your DNA and water in your body, you have the potential to access billions of years, millions of years, thousands of years, hundreds of years, decades, years, days, minutes, seconds to now. However, if there's distractions all around you, if there's something begging for your attention, if there's something getting under your skin, pissing you off, making you fearful, scaring you, fooling you, manipulating you, you're using all the resources in your God-given temple to deal with the manipulation, to deal with the distraction, and you're not able to create coherency. And when I say coherency, I'm talking about the difference between a light bulb and a laser. When I walk in a room and I hit the light switch, incoherent light is the reason why the room is filled. Because light is moving in all directions from the light bulb. It's incoherent. It's just wild. It's just spread out. And almost like the water is able to take on whatever it's contained in, so does the light with the light bulb. If you're inside of a room like we're in right now, the light is going to occupy the space in this room. However, if I make a laser, the laser is not going to occupy the entire room. Some of the ambient light from that laser will cause some extra light, but really it's going to be a beam of light shooting right across, okay? And that's coherence. That's all of those photons focused, doing one thing, moving in one unified direction. That's the coherency. So you want to create coherency in your body as well, because when things are incoherent inside your body, then there's a lot of chaos and you can't keep hold of it. All right, so water is a battery. You need to be drinking a gallon of this a day. And in drinking a gallon of it a day, what you're doing is you're cooling your body. You're providing the medium for all your chemical reactions. All of your cells that have a nucleus, they have mitochondria. Mitochondria one of its main talents is it has the ability to make water. So you actually have a water generator in your body. Your mitochondria makes water. It makes water with iron and copper. Iron and copper makes hydrogen peroxide, and then from hydrogen peroxide, it gets reduced into water. And this water is a special type of water I spoke of before, structured water. And that structured water is similar to the exclusion zone that we talked about earlier in this video. All right. And that exclusion zone, that structured water, is charged water. It's intelligent water. It's water with intent, and it's able to benefit your body a lot more. Now, when you're dehydrated, because usually when people come and they ask me questions about health and disease, before I get into food, I talk about, okay, where's your mother from? Where's your grandmother from? I want to know those things, because that's going to let me know what your haplotype is, meaning where you got your mitochondria from. And where you got your mitochondria from is going to let me know what your light dynamics are, what your metabolism is like, and what environment you're supposed to be in. So that's like one of the main things I'm going to ask is where is your parents from, specifically your mother and that lineage, because the mitochondria is only passed down by the woman. This is what I want to know. So then once I do that, I don't want to find out what's their light exposure like how much sun are you getting? How much are you outside? How often do you go to the tropics? How much are you going to the beach? You know, how much are you getting you swimming in water and things like that? I ain't even in the food yet. You know, I ain't even get there yet. And then I ask them, okay, how much water are you drinking? Because usually diseases are based on dehydration. Okay. You remember the Wizard of Oz? The Tin Man was stuck in the forest. He was rusted. He needed oil in his joints. So the longer you go without water and the more dehydrated you become, the more rusted, the more oxidized your enzymes, your tissues, and everything in your body is. And if it's rusted, if you have a rusted component in your car, it's not going to work. If your engine is rusted, it's not going to work. You know what I mean? So you got to make sure that you keep everything hydrated, because water is your oil, so to speak. That's the thing that's going to grease all of your joints up. Okay. Now, another thing that is very important in regards to water and light is the microbiome. Okay. Because we don't know that we are a collection of organisms. We are the earth. The same way that we look at the earth. And, you know, let's go to the Bible real quick. The Bible says that we got dominion over all the animals, right? So some people take that to the point that they mean that they could be dominant over animals and, oh, I have the right to kill this animal, eat that animal, da 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 da. But no, when somebody says they got dominion over the animals, then what that says is you're responsible for the animals. You're responsible for the whales. You're responsible for the lions. You're responsible for the alligators. You're responsible for the gorillas and the birds. You're responsible for them. Okay. You're the way you move around and the way you operate on this planet, you know, is going to affect them. So you have to keep them in mind. And the same way that it states that we have dominion over animals of the planet, we have dominion over our planet, our personal planet, which is ourselves. And we have a very diverse population, the same way the planet has a diverse population. The planet has bacteria. The planet has fungi. The planet has, when you look at animals, look how diverse the animals are. The insects, the spiders, the scorpions, the lobsters, the ocelots and the cougars, the panthers, the wolves and the foxes, you know, the deer, the elk, the moose. We go on all day naming animals, you know what I'm saying? But they're so diverse, their look, their shape, their color, their mating call, their sounds, how they give birth, their environments, how they travel, how they move. You know what I'm saying? They're very diverse. Now, we have that same diversity inside our body, but the diversity aren't large mammals and reptiles, they're microbial diversity. So you would apply that same principle of the animals to the microbes, such as the bacteria. Okay. We have we have 75 to 100 trillion cells that make our body up. For every cell, there's 10 bacteria. So you multiply 75 trillion times 10, and whatever that number is around, somewhere around there. That's how much bacteria you got. Now, majority of the bacteria resides in the gut. Okay? And the gut is it's like a particle accelerator. It's like the Large Hadron Collider. Okay, one way to understand that your gut and your intestines has everything to do with light is that the space inside your intestines, where your microvilla is, where all your nutrients are going to get absorbed, that space is called a lumen. And anybody that knows etymology or root words, anything like that, I know you've heard the term luminous, luminosity. Right? What does that mean? That means light. So why would they call that area in the intestines lumen when we know it's dark as hell up in there, right? Because it's inside the body. Why would they call it lumen? Because light plays a huge role in that space. So it's not about racism. It's not about being prejudiced. It's about people being different. That's how Dr. Sebi would put it. He would be like, not better than them, we're just different, right? So one of the differences that we can quantify is the fact that our microbiomes as a melanated people are different than the microbiomes of Caucasian people. And we'll find a difference in Mongoloid people too. Now, the three different people I just listed are phenotypes: Mongoloid phenotype, Negroid phenotype, or Congoloid, if Negroid offends you, and Caucasoid phenotype, right? These are the different phenotypes. Now, each one of these phenotypes have a different microbiome. They do not have the same. We might even share the same blood type. But the microbiome is different, and the microbiome has everything to do with the environment that you're in and the mitochondria that you received from your mama. Okay? So microbiome, when you say biome, you're talking about a geological area. Like if somebody was to put a dome over a large area in the rainforest, right? That would be a biome right there, okay, with all this life and flora and fauna and the balance of nature in there. Well, the reason why they call it microbiome is because that same diverse environment exists now, but on a small scale inside you. So there's two main categories of bacterial families in the microbiome, and that's firmicutes and bacteroidetes. Firmicutes and bacteroidetes. Now, there's a ratio, okay? Just like when you work in your weed eater, you know what I'm saying? Or any one of those lawn tools, you got to do the 50-50 mix. You know what I'm saying? You got to mix that oil with the gas and pour it in together for it to work. Well, it's a mix in regards to these families in these different phenotypes. But the mix is a percentile. All right. And it's not an even 50-50. It's going to be more like an 80-20. Now, with Caucasians, the 80-20 is 80 firmicutes and 20 bacteroidetes. But in our people, in melanated people, it's 80-20 with 80 being bacteroidetes and 20 being firmicutes. So what does this mean? This means that if I feed the melanated people the food of the Caucasians and I put the melanated people in a Caucasian environment, the microbiome is going to react to that. It's going to react to the food that's coming in. And the food has a barcode on it. The same way food got a barcode on it when you buy it in the store, does it not? When you go inside the produce section and you go to the checkout, right? You have to put it on the scale and the computer's going to ask you. It's going to say, what is the SKU, not the SKU number, but whatever that number is. You know, I think for like avocados, it's like 4066 or something like that, right? So you got to type the 4066 in there. But it has all these lines and it scans those lines. When it scans those lines, all this information pops up. But it's just lines though. How you take a sticker with a bunch of lines. And a laser, coherent light now. Remember we just talked about that. So the coherent light hits the barcode and you look at the monitor or the screen and all of a sudden all this information pops up. Avocado, the weight, how much it costs, da 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 da, right? Well, your food has a barcode, but the barcode is based on where it's grown, because wherever a plant grows, that's a specific geographical location. There's coordinates there. There's a latitudinal line and a longitudinal line, right? That latitudinal line, longitudinal line coordinates denotes what angle of sun is hitting that area. What angle of sun is hitting that area determines the temperature, okay? Determines the light cycle, determines what grows. And as that plant is growing, as that fruit and vegetable is maturing, the cells, the genetics, the DNA that makes this vegetable, this fruit up, has recorded and has pretty much absorbed all the information of the environment in it. So the fruit itself is a barcode of the sun and the environment. So an apple looks like an apple because that shape, that geometry, the components that make that thing up, the reason why it looks, tastes, smells like that, because that reflects the light of the sun and its environment. The water is based on the geometry. It's based on the environment and the sun. A banana, same thing. Collard greens, same thing. Artichoke, same thing. Pears, strawberries, berries, whatever. All these things have these shapes, these colors, these smells, these tastes, because the shape, the taste, the color denotes the barcode. It is the barcode. And in that barcode is a lot of information. And guess who scans that barcode? Your microbiome. And you're like, how the hell does bacteria, does it shoot light? It got coherent light? Yes, it does. Because we are more complex beings. Bacteria are archaea and prokaryotes, single cell organisms. We're multicellular organisms, right? So we have cellular membranes while they have cell walls, and our cellular membranes have a special fatty acid in there by the name of DHA. DHA stands for docosahexaenoic acid. Docosa means 22. Hexa means 6, okay? So the reason why it's called docosahexaenoic acid and docosa mean 22 is because it has 22 carbons in its molecule, okay? Now, this particular molecule is very, very special because it actually is the measuring stick of how much intelligence and charge we can hold as a being, as an entity. So this is why dolphins are so smart, because their DHA is crazy. If you look at their brains is stupid. It looks like it's about to explode. You know, we think dolphins are just some people think they fish. They don't even know they mammals. You know what I'm saying? Some people don't even know that dolphins can communicate with you. You know, like they're very intelligent, very smart beings. And we have DHA as well, but we struggle with the consumption of DHA. A lot of people ain't getting enough DHA in. And because of that, we miss that charge that we need. Now, melanin helps, but when you got DHA and you got melanin, you're doing some real work then. So because bacteria doesn't have DHA, that means that when light enters bacteria, it can't hold the light inside the cell. See, when we get light in the cell, we have all these chromophores and we got DHA in our membranes. So that prevents us from losing the light. We can take the light, convert the light into a direct current, into electricity, and use the electricity as a charge mechanism to charge the body so the intelligence can work. The intelligence is always there inside of our body, ready to work, but if it has no energy, it's not going to work. I have the intelligence to work, but when it's late at night and I'm tired, guess what? I don't have the charge to do any more work. So I go to sleep to recharge. Your phone has to be plugged in order to be recharged so it could do the work. If the battery dies, the intelligence is not lost in your phone. The minute you charge it, it's still there. So bacteria, because they have the ability to release light because they can't hold it, then what happens is when your bacteria gets the light in your gut from the food, because remember, food ain't nothing but encoded sunlight. That's it. When you chew that apple and you biting it and you swallowing it and it becomes a bolus and it goes on your esophagus and it goes through peristalsis and you go through your cardiac sphincter and you go in your stomach and you go through your pyloric sphincter and now you're in your intestines and now your pancreas and your gallbladder and your liver starts secreting juices so that you can start to digest this food. Every step of it breaking down is going to release light. And when the bacteria comes inside the gut and it starts to consume the food, it's consuming the light. And when it consumes the light from the food, it releases the light in a certain way that hits the enterocytes, or the cells that make up your intestines. And that's just like the coherent laser, right? In the self-checkout in the supermarket, now scanning the barcode. So let's say that you're eating food that doesn't coincide with the light you're getting outside from your eyes or on your skin. So the light from your food is one type of light, then the light from your environment is another type of light, then you're sitting in front of a computer getting that artificial stimulus. You got these three lights going on crisscrossing, your body's confused. Your bacteria is confused. So then your bacteria is going to start to, the whole diverse environment inside of your gut is going to start to change. And how does this make sense? Well, people used to have the crazy idea that there was a lot of wolves, I think, in like Yellowstone Park, right? It might have been Yosemite, but it's one of the national parks. So it was like, okay, we're going to start killing the wolves. Because if we kill the wolves, they're the predator, right? The numbers will go down, and then the deer numbers, you know, the deer will be protected because they won't have so many predators going after them, right? Well, when they started doing that, they found out that the deer's numbers exploded. So if the deer numbers explode, now the deer are going to be eating all the vegetation. If they eat all the vegetation, they're going to affect another cycle in nature that would normally be checks and balances between the fact that they have a predator. The predator eats the deer, that controls the numbers so that it doesn't explode and the deer doesn't do this, and then that next, it doesn't have that domino effect. So the same thing will happen in your gut with the diverse animal kingdom by having these, what you would call circadian mismatches, right? Based on the types of foods you eat and the environment that you in and the artificial stimuli you're having confusing the gut, it becomes less diversified. And when there's less diversification in the gut, you have room for pathogenic bacteria to occur. Your bacteria have the ability to perform something called horizontal gene transfer. Now, to make it real simple, you and I do vertical gene transfer. What's vertical gene transfer? I get with my queen, we do the horizontal mamba, whatever you want to call it. You know what I'm saying? You know, I bless her with my solar waters, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? She gets impregnated. We have a child. We have just vertically transferred our genetics down to the next in our lineage, to our progeny. And then when they grow up, you know, girl finds a guy, or the son grows up and finds a wife, and they do the same thing and they pass. So that's vertical gene transfer. You're transferring your genes vertically from one generation to the next. Generation, root word is what? Gene, okay? So horizontal gene transfer is similar to football when they do a lateral pass. They throw it to the side, or even in basketball when somebody does like an around the back to the side to somebody so they could make a fast break and they could get to the hole real quick. So bacteria is able to do that. They're able to transfer their genetics to other bacteria. So a bacteria might not be used to making a thing or doing a thing, so it can get its genetics from another microbe and incorporate it in itself. So if you're eating certain foods, on a positive note, natural foods, indigenous foods, on a negative note, GMO foods, on both sides, these bacteria, because they can deal with horizontal gene transfer, they can incorporate genetic information into them. Now, if your bacteria get hijacked by genetically modified organism foods, right? Now you have a Trojan horse, so to speak, because it's your microbiome, but their genetics have been manipulated because of the foods that you're eating. But on another note, with the indigenous foods, you can get that same genetic transfer, and it can bless your bacteria and end up blessing you, giving you enzymes that you don't even normally have. So not only do we have our nuclear genome in our nucleus, not only do we have our mitochondrial genome from our mitochondria, we also have our bacterial genome from our microbiome, which is not only in our gut, but in our mouths, okay? Anywhere that there's an opening, you know, a woman's vagina, these are all microbiomes. The surface of your skin, we have trillions of bacteria covering every section of our skin. And they play the first line of defense with things trying to get inside the body. They sit right on the surface. They sit on your scalp. They sit on your hair, you know? So the microbiome is extremely dynamic, and you want to make sure that you're taking care of your gut. Because if you're not taking care of your gut, then your gut will take you out the game quickly. AIDS is acquired immune deficiency syndrome. The first letter, the first word is A for acquired. When you acquire something, that means you didn't have it before. It means that you acquired it. You got it from somewhere. Now, that doesn't mean that you slept with somebody and you got it. No, it means based on your behavior, that's how you got it. So you eating a certain way, and by eating in a certain way, you're breaking your digestive system down, so you're not able to extract and assimilate the nutrients and the energy of the sun like you're supposed to do from your food, and it ends up affecting you. One of the main things that happens is you end up getting leaky gut because you're separating the cells inside your gut, and things are able to spill through. You know? Another problem that ends up happening is the fact that people think that they can eat other people's foods. But like I said, the 80-20. Caucasians are firmicutes. We're bacteriotides. So we have to make sure that we deal with foods that's more consistent with our genetic history, not a Caucasian genetic history. All right. And we will benefit from that, you know. So look into the microbiome. When we're born, we're saran wrapped in a microbiome coming through the vagina. Did you know that? So cesarean sections are detrimental. What's the root word of cesarean section? Y'all probably ain't never even paid attention to that. Caesar, like Rome. It's a cesarean section. It's named after him. Okay, where they pull the baby out the side. Now, imagine that you're just, because when you're a baby in your mother, you're just consciousness. You don't know nothing about nobody. You hear, there's flashes of light, there's vibrations, but you're suspended in water and in darkness. Then all of a sudden, somebody slices a hole and just yanks you out. That's traumatic. I don't think that you can ever get over that trauma in your whole life. I think you're going to always be on edge. You're always going to have inflammation in a certain amount a certain thing going on with you because that's how you experienced your first moments. No, you need to get that pressure from the pelvic bone. You need to travel down the vaginal canal. You need to twist. Your head needs to crown. See, this is why we're all royalty. Because the stage of a child head showing through the vagina, this is the vagina, this is the shape of it right there. When that head come through there, they call it crowning. Crowning. And it's a burning sensation that the mother feels. She feels a ring of fire. What is that ring of fire? That ring of fire is a crown, because what is crown? Crown, corona, the sun, coronal mass ejection, right? Light emanating from the sun, light emanating from the sun, that's like fire, that's heat. So by you crowning, you're giving your sovereignty. You are giving your royalty through that. The minute that head pokes through that onion bulb shape of the vagina. And as you slowly slide through that vaginal opening, the bacteria in the vagina coat you from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. Then who's catching you when you come out? The doctor? Hell no. He is not supposed to be doing that. He should just be standing to the side if you're going in that route. The father is supposed to catch the baby, because now his hands, because remember I said skin is another microbiome. Now the baby lands in the father's hands. Now the father puts his bacteria on the baby. So now you have the microbiome from your mother's vagina. You got the microbiome from your father's skin. Those are working. Then you go to your mother's bosom. You lay there and you feed on the milk. And in feeding on the milk is providing bacteria and creating your whole digestive system that you don't even have when you're born. It really is getting created when you're fed through the colostrum first, and then it's followed by the milk after some time. So it's very dynamic and it's very integral, the role that bacteria play. And we're under the impression that we're supposed to be living in a sterile environment. Now, any man who's seeking out a woman to start a family with, when you find out a woman's sterile, like, you're not going to get with that woman. If a woman finds out that a man is sterile and he's shooting blanks, she's not going to be impressed by that. Vigor and virility and libido has everything to do with how concentrated and how dense your reproductive juices are. And when we make love and when we have sex, when we copulate, the exchange of bodily fluids is an exchange of bacteria occurring. That's why people that are spouses and that live together, they're immune to one another. They really can't get sick off each other like that, but you can get sick off another person, because y'all aren't resonating with y'all bacteria like that. And their bacteria, based on their drinking, their smoking, the life that they're living, they could be given certain types of bacteria and microbes to you that is very difficult for your bacteria to fend off. And they might end up, their growth might explode inside of you, where they're growing at an alarming rate and taking over. And what happened? You just got colonized by a whole nother group of people taking over. They stick the flag in your gut and everything. So pay attention to the microbiome. Very important. Light plays a huge role where you live and the food that you're eating, because your microbiome, the bacteria in there, is going to utilize light as a means to detect, to decode, to read barcodes, to provide your body with the information. It's almost like our actual body is like a little baby, like we're still in the crib trying to crawl and lift our head up. And bacteria and microbes are like the adults. They're like the parents. They're like the nannies. You know what I'm saying? Making breakfast, washing our clothes, putting socks on us, taking us to the park, putting Band-Aids on our scraped knee. That's what it's doing. And we pay the nanny. We pay, the teacher. We pay the babysitter for watching us, for doing all our work. We pay our parents by not literally giving them money, but we pay our parents by our performance and how we develop and how we grow in life. We make them proud. So we pay the bacteria through the food we eat and the environment that we live in and the chemicals that we make based on our health. But when we do not live in an optimum healthy lifestyle, what ends up happening is you're compromising your bacteria. It's like you're stealing money out your mother's purse. It's like you got your dad fired from his job. It's like you slept with the babysitter and now she going to jail. You know what I'm saying? That's the shit you doing when you eating the wrong food and you're living in the wrong environment. Okay? Now, we talked about acid and alkaline earlier, and it's very interesting how our blood keeps a certain level of alkalinity all the time. So there's a misnomer where we feel that, oh man, we got to eat alkaline foods because if we don't, our body's going to get acidic. Our blood is going to get acidic. See, our blood can't get acidic. If our blood gets acidic, we die. So what ends up happening is our body has a buffer system. It has a contingency plan to constantly keep our blood in a narrow window, is around 7.365, so that it stays alkaline. And how it does this is by affecting other parts in the body. So if you're eating a lot of acidic foods, it affects other parts of the body by making that part of the body having to do the necessary things to keep the blood alkaline. And I'll give an example. You have your thyroid gland and you have your parathyroid gland. So your thyroid gland has calcitonin. Then your thyroid gland got calcitonin and your parathyroid gland has parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone raises calcium levels. Calcitonin decreases calcium levels in the blood. Now, where does the calcium come from? Because you're not sitting around eating seaweed and seashells and bones all day long, you know what I'm saying? But you have a huge deposit of calcium in the form of your bones, and your bones are all over your body. So you have two cells in your bones called osteoclast and osteoblast, because osteo means bone. Blast means to build, even though I know when you think blast, you think of the sound of a bomb, so it means to blow up. But like fibroblast, anytime you see the word blast, that means that something is something that builds something or creates something or forms something. And osteoclast means the exact opposite. So osteoblasts are cells that build bone. They're able to sequester calcium ions from out the blood and redeposit them into the bone, building bone. And then osteoclast is actually the one that dissolves the bone, the storage of calcium, and releases the calcium ions in the blood. So calcitonin, because it's responsible for decreasing calcium ions in the blood, that means that calcitonin directly affects which one? It's going to end up affecting osteoblast, because osteoblast is going to be the one to assist in decreasing the calcium ions. So if calcitonin tells osteoblast, yo, osteo, yo, what's up? Yo, I need you to build some more bone. Blast is like, bet. All right, man, is there some calcium ions in the blood right now? They like, yeah, they floating all around. That's why I'm calling you, bro. I'm only going to call you when we got to do this, man. So you only got to ask that. Just go outside and start pulling in all the calcium and build some new bone. That's what calcitonin do. So it decreases calcium levels, not in your bones, but in the blood. And it does so by stimulating osteoblast, by taking those calcium ions and redepositing it into the bone, building bone up. Now, parathyroid hormone increases calcium ions in the blood. So what does it stimulate? It stimulates osteoclast. So parathyroid hormone gets on the phone and be like, yo, osteoclast, what's up, bruh? He like, what's up, man? What you need, man? You know what I'm calling for, man. Yo, we need to raise calcium levels in the blood right now. Why do we need to raise calcium levels in the blood? How many times I got to tell you, osteoclast, that we cannot allow blood to get acidic. If blood gets acidic, we all gonna die. Now I know we gonna live and energy doesn't die, it just transforms in thermodynamic laws. Bro, I like this body, I like my life, I like my job. I'm trying to live up in here, I'm trying to keep it going, I'm trying to do my job. Because when I go to the next organism, I want them to hire me based on my resume. So we got to keep calcium ions in this blood, because this person up here eating all this pizza and this fried chicken and drinking beer and eating all this crap, and he getting mad acidic. And yo, we gonna have to keep his blood alkaline, because if we don't, he gonna die. And his wife ain't gonna like it. His kids definitely not gonna like it. His mama ain't gonna like it either. So we gotta do something about it. So osteoclasts say, I bet. So it starts to dissolve all the bone, all the storage of the bone, and it starts to release all of the ions into the blood. And now that the calcium ions in the blood, it's a buffer that now keeps the alkalinity of the blood. So the stabilization of your blood's alkalinity has to deal with the interplay of two hormones, calcitonin and parathyroid hormone, and two cells of the bone, osteoclasts and osteoblasts. All right. So you want to make sure that you eat alkaline foods, because if you continue to eat a lot of acidic foods, what's going to happen? You're going to overwork your parathyroid. You're going to overwork your osteoclasts. You're going to dissolve your bone. You're going to suffer from osteoporosis. You're going to suffer from fragile bones, shattered bones. Your bones are going to be creaky. They're going to be weak. Okay, this is why when we look at the news right now, we look at sports right now, you got football players and basketball players, boy, they breaking left and right. In the 70s, it wasn't like that. In the 60s, it wasn't like that. In football, do you know the helmets used to just be leather flaps? They ain't had none of them goddamn guards. They was mowing over each other. Basketball too, like cats would get elbow, knee, busted, all types as people was going up to the rim. But now, yo, somebody steps on a cat toe and his whole kneecap fall out. And that's because the quality standard of our body is dropping the same way the quality standard of homes is. When homes that are built in the 70s are a lot stronger than homes that are built today, because the trees that they were cutting down back then, that I don't condone, you know, all that lumber and cutting all out the air supply off, and you know, animals and environmental homes and everything like that, topsoil getting washed away. But the trees that they were cutting down back in the 60s and 70s, it was a lot larger. They had a huger circumference. How does a tree get large? It has to be there a long time. Trees grow over years, and the rings denote their age. So the wider they are, the more rings they got, the stronger and more denser that the tree is. Today, because they've been cutting so many trees so long, we're not giving trees time to mature, so they're cutting young trees. And because they're cutting young trees, they're taking that lumber and they're building the houses, and the houses don't have the same integrity as they once had, just like our bodies. Because we're eating plastic from the moment that we're born, so that means that our body is now made of plastic. We're like G.I. Joe and Barbie dolls. You know what I'm saying? Then we're having plastic children, you know, giving birth to Cabbage Patch Kids. You know what I'm saying? Garbage Pail Kids. Y'all don't remember the Garbage Pail Kids, man. If you was from New York, if you was in New York in the 90s coming up, boy, them stickers was everywhere. You know, that was my joint. I used to love the Garbage Pail Kids. So you want to make sure you stay alkaline, because you don't want to dissolve your bone. Remember, your spine is made out of bone too. You do not want your spine, you having spinal issues. You don't want to have knee issues, thigh issues, hip issues, none of that stuff. You thinking because you're young now and you can get around and you can make it around that you straight. But every 10 years that go by in your life, your heteroplasmy raises. What is heteroplasmy? Heteroplasmy is a measurement inside of the mitochondria. It's the distance in between all of the enzymes. The enzymes in your mitochondria need to stay real close in proximity to one another to create a more dynamic flow of current of the electrons that get pumped through the electron transport chain. For every angstrom that they separate, ends up decreasing your redox, which is the metabolism of your power and your charge and your health. And this decreases every 10 years. So what you used to do, if you 40, you can't do what you was doing when you was 20 if you live in a certain way. You already know that. Okay, you know when that girl comes in that room, that thing is not as rock as it don't got that curve no more. You know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You don't got that curve no more. And y'all women, that sponge get dry real quick. That sponge get dry real, you know what I'm saying? And you got the loss of curve and you got the semi-wet sponge. And when you bring that together, you is not going to get the induction coil mechanism of sex that normally is supposed to happen. There's supposed to be a whole electromagnetic plasmic event happening, but y'all charge is so low and y'all don't have all the players involved, you know? No, y'all probably think I'm sniffing cocaine because I keep rubbing on my nose over here like KT. That's how you be remembering all this shit. But nah, I got facial hair. I got nose hairs. And the more I talk, the more I get in, this shit just be like doing things. And it's like, And I can't sneeze because if I sneeze, FEMA gonna come busting in my crib and take my goddamn temperature. So I gotta chill. You know what I'm saying? So make sure y'all stay alkaline, because alkaline is equivalent to voltage and acidity is equivalent to loss of voltage. So when you increase your alkalinity in foods, you increase the voltage in your body, you increase the charge in your body. When you eat a lot of acidic foods, then you increase the loss of voltage inside. Yeah, I said that. Increase the loss of voltage inside your body. And you don't want that. You don't want that. You want to keep the charge up, because disease, cancers, infections, diseases, autoimmune pathologies, they all occur when you drop to a certain charge. So you can keep a charge up and you could be doing a whole bunch of garbage junk. But if that charge is staying up there, then you don't have to worry about disease and issues and problems. The disease don't creep in until you drop to a particular charge. All right. Now, I got some herbs around me that I'm going to talk about. We got an herb right here I spoke of before. If you go on my Patreon, I have a series on there called The Sacred Herbs of Dr. Sebi. And I'm going to speak on this real quick because, I don't really respond to gossip or what people might be saying, but in times I have to respond because I want to make sure that I inform, my audience so they don't get caught up, because, even though I might have an audience, that don't mean my audience is not the audience of other people. And I have to give them the benefit of the doubt. If they respect me, they respect them. They respect whoever they listening to. So if somebody says something and they hear it, they want to be loyal to me, but they also want to be loyal to the other person that they're an audience member to. So sometimes they're confused and they don't know what to believe. So that's why at times I like to make sure I present myself so you can know where I'm coming from, and I'm not here to lie. So if I say it, that's what it is. Now, the reason why I call my series Sacred Herbs of Dr. Sebi is not because I understand that people in the equatorial regions in the Caribbean and Central America have an understanding of the herbs in their environment. Like, I know that already. I'm from the tropical environment. I'm from the Virgin Islands. So I know that people in those areas have I would say limited understanding about the herbs in the environment. Now, of course, in some areas you got people that's upstairs with it, but kind of like across the board, it's minimal. You know what I'm saying? It's a minimal thing. But I would say that across the board in the tropical regions, people do consume a lot more vegetation and a lot more greens, because I know in the Caribbean and in the Virgin Islands alone, chlorophyll is a constant. So they juice greens, wild bush herbs, and make a green drink called chlorophyll, and they sell that junk like people be selling wine coolers and stuff like that during carnivals and things. And people who eat pork all the way down to vegans buy chlorophyll, drink chlorophyll, because they understand the necessity of that magnesium and the chlorophyll and its properties, So people that live in the States, people that live overseas, people that live in the cold, people that came up in the hood, people that came up in the streets, they don't know what a guaco is. They don't know what a cucumeca is. They don't even know what red clover is growing in their backyard, or the plantain growing in the ground that could stop, you know, the venom from a snake bite, insect bite, and things like that. They don't know about all that. So I speak from the perspective as though the people don't know. And to me, I personally feel that the herbs are sacred, because I'm an ethnobotanist. I love plants. I love herbs. I love studying them and the principles of them. I respect them. I respect the creator. I respect the mother. And I feel that they are sacred. I feel that you should treat them in a sacred fashion. If I don't use that term, then people ain't going to understand how to utilize the herbs as I'm telling them. And I think that's a level of disrespect if I do that, especially if this information was passed down to me from individuals such as my mother and Dr. Sebi, who felt that herbs were sacred. Now, we know plants are sacred because if they wasn't, in the beginning of every black function, we wouldn't be pouring libation. Why are we pouring libation? Why are we pouring water? As we talked about, water is a battery, right? Water is psychoreactive, meaning that it is able to receive your mental thoughts. So you can take water and impart your thinking, your thoughts, your emotions, your vibe, your love, your hate, your energy into the water and drink the water. The water will carry that energy and that information into your cells, into your tissues, creating whatever circumstances necessary to achieve whatever that intent is. That's what water does, you know? So with libations, we're taking water, we're pouring water into plants, and we are doing a call and response where people are telling, sharing with everybody loved ones who have transitioned, who are now ancestors. And we say their name, and we pour the water, and we say that we don't pour the water in a bucket. We don't pour the water on a floor. We don't pour the water on top of a steak. We don't pour the water on top of a lobster tail. We pour the water in a plant. Okay? Because plants are sacred. Water is a battery. We're creating a whole quantum mechanical situation right there. We are affecting the environment. We're removing negativity from the room. We're creating a boundary so that we, as a group of people that have this topic in common, we want to learn, we want to study, we want to give respect to the speaker. The speaker wants to be able to have the necessary flow state to download the necessary information and convey it to the audience. So we're doing all of this. We're getting help from the ancestors. We're having, think about it. Think if there's 100 strangers in a room about to see an event, and we pour libation out of 100 people, 75 of those people announce their ancestors, they're calling on these energies. These energies are in the room. Now, instead of 100 people in the room, there's 175 people in the room. Okay, and 75 of them are spiritual entities that have all types of vibes on them that could do more than we could do because they're from another plane, they're in another dimension. You know, so we can understand it on that level. But then when I say sacred herbs of Dr. Sebi, then you can't understand that. Because people from the Caribbean want to say, oh, guaco ain't sacred. We all know the guaco. But let me tell you this. There's not just one type of guaco. There's not a ubiquitous guaco. First of all, there's all different types of guaco, but they're split up into two different types. There's the Microbiome guaco. And then in the aster family, which is the family of sunflowers, right? And then there is the Aristolochia guaco that's in the family of Aristolochia that's going to have aristolochic acid. Now, why does that matter? What matters is if you go with the aster guaco, then you can take that guaco under any circumstances. But if you're taking the other guaco that has aristolochic acid in there, they can form DNA adducts. What's a DNA adduct? A DNA adduct is when something is able to attach itself to your DNA strand. And in attaching itself in this DNA strand, it's able to manipulate the signal and the energy and the storage that's going on in that section of the DNA that's a gene. And when something comes to that gene to select that section and transcribe a protein, an enzyme, or whatever else is trying to build, and that DNA adduct is there, that's going to cause a mutation in the formation of whatever protein you're trying to build. And if you have a mutated protein, design denotes function, this particular protein is not going to have the necessary shape and functionality it's supposed to have, so it's going to end up doing more harm than good in your body. And in order to offset this DNA adduct situation, instead of having the Apiaceae family of plants being consumed along with it, you want to make sure that you're consuming the mustard family of plants. Now, when I say Apiaceae family, I'm talking about the parsley family. So things like turnips and parsley, and cumin and all of that. You don't want to be using those seasonings and those plants in that family if you're taking guaco or any other aristolochic plants such as contribo, such as duck flower. These are all aristolochia plants. So you got to make sure that you're eating more mustard family plants when you take those type of herbs, and let go of the parsley family plants, because if you have more parsley than the sulfur plants, then you're going to end up suffering from that. But if you deal with the aster, there's different rules with that. So you don't know that. Most people in the Caribbean don't know that. And the average mojo out there don't know that either. So I make sure that I give this information so that people can make proper decisions. And folks that didn't grow up in a tropical environment with all these tropical herbs that Sebi talks about all the time growing in multitudes, they have not experienced that growing up. I want to bring that to them and educate that to them. And if you're from the Caribbean and you have this information, then you need to take your information and you need to give it to the people. Okay? So guaco is a bronchodilator. What does dilate mean? It means to open. What does bronchio mean? It's short for the bronchial tubes or the bronchioles, which makes up your respiratory system. So if you're dealing with a system where a situation where it's difficult for you to breathe in, you're wheezing like an asthma, pneumonia, where the inflammation of your respiratory tract, right, has caused the mucous membrane to swell up, and in it swelling up, it's like a shrinking of the diameter of a hose. Where you go from a garden hose to a coffee straw, you're going to start wheezing. You're not able to get enough air out. Well, that smooth muscle tissue gets affected by the active components, especially the coumarin, the blood thinners that exist inside this plant that open it up so you're able to breathe. You're able to breathe properly. Okay, now, in regards to everything going on with the COVID-19, it's not so much being able to get air in, but it's a matter of being able to transport the oxygen into the tissues, into the cells, to the mitochondria. And if you compromise the actual iron transport system on the way to the tissue, then you can breathe, you can have all the air passage you want. It's just that it's not going anywhere. All right. Now, these little chunks right here is cucumeca, all right? Cucumeca, which is kind of a wild form of sarsaparilla. Now, Sebi talked about sarsaparilla all the time. If men are having libido issues, okay? If men are trying to get in the gym, sarsaparilla contains a testosterone plant analog. Analog means like synonym, like a physical synonym. So in our body, it'd be testosterone. In the plant, it would be something else. But based on its bioavailability, when we get it in our system, it acts just like testosterone. So that's why Sebi always suggested sarsaparilla. This is a form of sarsaparilla, but it's called cucumeca. And what this particular root does is it helps to rebuild hemoglobin. So if you deal with a bronchodilator that's able to affect the smooth muscle tissue and open up your bronchioles so you can get more air into your alveoli, then you can get rid of all that excess fluid and water in there. You can now get oxygen into the blood. And then with the cucumeca helps with the building of hemoglobin and red blood cells. Now you have a stable mechanism mechanism to be able to capture that oxygen you breathe in and then transfer it throughout your body properly. So, of course, it's going to help your libido because a phallus, okay, is mainly a sponge that is inundated with blood networks and blood channels that can fill up. So as the blood is filling up and the ring at the base of the phallus tightens, now you have like an iron rod. Okay, a woman is a vagina that has rings that make up her vagina, where there's copper and there's iron and all type of minerals in those rings. And if you take an iron rod and you place it inside of a coil, you're going to induce an electric field. So we're actually electrical dynamos creating an electric dynamic force when we have sex. That's why it's so electrical. That's why it's so powerful. If it's done right, if it's done right. I don't know about all of y'all out there, but I get mine in. Yeah, so, I mean, I'm a Scorpio. I don't have no choice. So, hair, skin, and nails. But I'm going to get into a part of the body I just discussed on Brother Rich's platform. Shout out to Brother Rich and Black Magic 363. We just talked about the RA system, which is the reticular activating system. Reticulation, reticulum, all those terms mean network, like internet, like a web, like you mingling at a party, you know, rubbing shoulders and everything, network, okay? And activation system, activating what? The reticular activation system is the system that you have built into your body. It's physical, like you could point to it, you can touch it, you can grab it. I mean, you might not want to do that while it's in your brain. I'm just saying it's something tangible. And what this system does is it allows you to attain whatever it is you want to attain in your life. You have the ability to do that. So a good example is, you like, yo, I want a Range Rover. I like Range Rovers. I want an orange Range Rover with a cream butter leather interior, right? You go to sleep. You get up the next day, that whole next week, all you see is Range Rovers. You might not see that color, but you just start seeing Range Rovers everywhere. You see Range Rover commercials. You see Range Rovers parked in the same parking lot you just parked in. You got a guy behind you saying you're driving too slow. He honking, you turn around, it's a Range Rover. You look at this new video from your favorite artist and he pulls up in the Range. You know what I'm saying? It's just Range Rover palooza everywhere. Now, it's not that there weren't any Ranges before, you just wasn't paying attention to them as much. And it's the fact that you wired yourself to make that a priority. So because your environment is able to be manipulated, you manipulate your environment, your world. You have to stop thinking that you're so small and insignificant that you don't affect your world. An ant is, I don't even know what fraction of a size it is to you, but your toenail is big to an ant. Yet a red ant gets on your leg and bites you in the ankle, that shit gonna hurt. It's gonna burn, it's gonna swell up, it's gonna have juices, you gonna pop, you know what I'm saying? You're gonna have a whole sore based on this little ant. So that ant, he stood his ground and he showed you, yo, I'm up in this thing, right? I'm in this piece. I'm on my square. I live here. The same way that Neo jumped into Agent Smith near the end of the Matrix and exploded him. And when he breathed, the world breathed with him. That is our actual life. It's just that our brain is made in a certain way and is structured that it filters a lot. So you don't notice how impactful your thoughts and your intent is to the world that's around you. Where your reticular activation system, which sits pretty much right under the brainstem, midbrain, I'm sorry, and in the area of the brainstem up top the spinal cord, it contains melanated centers such as the locus ceruleus and the substantia nigra. It contains nuclei, you know, that are just bunches of nerves. And it's very meticulous wiring, the same meticulous wiring that you would see in a quantum computer, something like that. Like, I mean, on another level, but just to give you an idea of the intricacy of it all. And when you put something in your head, in your mind that you want to do, your reality will react to that intent. Okay. The environment that we live in is like mud. And what can you do when you see mud in the ground? You can take a stencil. You can take a stick. You can take anything and you can push it into the mud and you can make an impression in it. And when you make that impression in it and you move that thing away, now you can see that impression in the mud. Well, the world is like a jello. It's like a mud. It's something that you can impress yourself into. And by you impressing yourself into it, it will reflect the impression back to you. Okay, but you have to mean it. You know, if you want to be a lawyer, like, you got to put that in your head. Then you'll start noticing law shows all on the TV. Like, somebody be like, yo, you ever watch Perry Mason and Matlock when you was coming up? Be like, nah, I ain't never heard of that before. You know, you start, you know, you go to a used bookstore, you see a black law dictionary. You know what I'm saying? You find out one of your closest friends that you've known for the past 10 years was a Moore on the low, and he knows everything about law and you know, UCC and all that type of stuff. And he like, man, I just didn't know you would care about my information, you know? So understand that the world you live in is psychoreactive. And how do we know that? Remember, we started off with water. Well, I'm ending with water. It's almost gone. But we started off with water, and I told you water is impressionable. Water has memory. Water reacts to your thoughts. Water reacts to your mind. So if the world that we live in, the earth that we live on is predominantly water, if the atmosphere that we walk around in is predominantly moisture, because it's called the Empyrean Sea, it's just like the ocean, it's just not as dense. We swimming through the Empyrean Sea every time we walking around. This is water too. So if it's nothing but vapor around us, if it's nothing but clouds on top of our head with vapor, if there's nothing but water beneath our feet, water coming down, water all around, then that means this reality can react to your thinking and your thoughts, but you have to have intent. That's why we learn at a very young age to be honest and be truthful. You know, like Mr. G. Mr. G is an honest and truthful dude. Like, he is a stand-up guy. And because he's honest, because he's truthful, because he's a stand-up individual, he has great health. He has a great rapport with individuals. He has a great career. Okay, he's very impressionable. He's very good at anything he takes on. He's an athlete. He's not just an athlete, he's the athlete. And the reason why he's able to do all these things is because he's truthful and honest. He is impressionable in his reality. So the reality is going to reflect that truth and honesty back to him. And he's training and wiring his mind, because if you say something that's the truth and your actions follow with that truth and you wire your body, your DNA, your frequencies into that, then that means that when you say shit, you saying abracadabra. You know what I'm saying? You waving a wand and you saying this is so and that is so and that is so. But if you a pathological liar and you ain't shit, then guess what's going to end up happening? You're going to try to speak things in existence, but what's going to come back is shit that's going to hurt you, because it's not true. It's not honest. You're going to create your reality, but not the reality that you want to create, because you're not giving the proper intention. Okay? Intention, tension in, within, tightness, intention, the pressure, okay? Applying that shit to the carbon so you can create that crystalline structure, that diamond. So with the reticular activation system, you're going to find a collection of nerve fibers, right? That are very intricate, going up the stem, that goes all into your cerebrum, and it manipulates your whole brain, your whole body, everything. And what I have in front of you right now is a herb that looks just like the nerves of the reticular activation system in other areas of the brain. Okay, if you notice the junctions on this column and the little strings that are popping out of it, just like nerve fibers would be, this thick part would be like thick nerves that are collected together. And these would be like the thinner nerves that are collected that going into other areas perpendicular to it. This is called horsetail, cola de caballo, or equisetum arvens, but it's horsetail, and it contains a large amount of silica. It contains gold. It contains platinum-based metals. This is one of the best herbs that sequester the platinum-based metals out of the earth, and they're all in here. This is how this plant is able to grow with this structure so high and have such a sustained structure in weather patterns and wind and so forth and so on. So if you make tea out of this particular herb right here, it's going to help your brain. It's going to help your skin, hair, and nails because of the silica content. Remember, one of the best storage mechanisms for memory is quartz crystals. They vibrate at like 750,000 times a second. They vibrate so fast we don't even feel it. But all crystals vibrate. All quartz crystals vibrate. And let me get a... This is a quartz crystal right here, just in case you're somebody who don't know what a quartz crystal is. This is made out of silica. Okay, silica is what is the basis of quartz. That is the predominant mechanism. So people use crystals all the time, you know, to attract things, to repel things, you know, to clear energy. You know, they wear them, they put them around their house. If you had the ability to eat quartz crystals, you would, because you would say, oh man, if I could take these properties and consume them, I would. Well, that's what this is. Horsetail is like consuming a quartz crystal in its bioavailable form. You see what I'm saying? Now, if quartz and crystals go to Superman in the Fortress of Solitude, what was it made out of? It was made out of quartz crystals, gypsum. And he was able to store millions of years of his family and heredity information in those crystals. Crystals are the best way to store information. So your brain is a organ that is meant to store information and recall information from, right? And that's something that separates intelligence, is people that can recall things and people that really can't recall things, right? And memory takes you back to your past. It's what establishes who you are. You need your memory. When memory starts going down through Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and the other neurodegenerative diseases, you have issues, you have problems. So if you can get more quartz, if you can get silica inside the brain, you can reinstate, you can create that quartz, you can create that crystalline structure, that crystalline matrix that you need in order to fortify your memory banks. Okay, so horsetail is going to help you with that. And just to give you a tidbit on how powerful horsetail is, your spinal cord has a cerebral spinal fluid flowing at the top of it and down it to a certain degree. And the spinal cord is what's responsible for transferring the information from the head to the body and the body to the head, right? And it also is what the vertebrae, the backbone that keeps you up, keep you strong, you know, spine always denotes strength and power. It's what keeps you upright, right? It's what makes us who we are. When you slouch, that shows that, you know, you're having a problem with your intelligence. That body language shows something about your intelligence, about your energy, about who you are and your character. So the bottom of the spinal cord is called the cauda equina. Cauda equina. It splits up into all these little fibers, and cauda equina is Latin for horse tail. Okay, so this particular, when I said cola de caballo, that's Spanish. All right. However, the cauda equina is Latin. All right. So they both mean the same thing. They both mean horsetail. So your brain actually has a piece of it that's called horsetail. So we have a herb called horsetail, and it's been used for millennia. Now, in addition to the hair, skin, and nails, in addition to the reticular activation system that is looked that up, that's responsible for you attaining anything your heart's desires, whatever you want in life, you could do it through your Ras, through Ras, right? It's also great for the kidneys. So if you have any kidney malfunctions, any problem going on with your kidneys, this particular herb right here will assist with that. And it's real simple. You take you take this much, I would take some kitchen scissors and cut them up into little pieces, right? And put it inside of a pot with about 2 cups of water and bring it to a boil. You know, as soon as you bring it to a boil, turn it off. Yeah, you can let it boil maybe 2-3 minutes, turn it off, let it steep for about 15-20 minutes, strain it, drink a cup or 2 during the day. Drink like 3 cups. And the good thing is you could pour some more water on top of this and repeat the process again and probably do that about 3-4 times. A lot of these herbs that I'm talking about, you're able to use over and over again. So yeah, this one right here, this is Obra Grande. Obra Grande is also known as quassia. All right, quassia has an interesting story where the colonialists, the imperialists that was in South America, specifically Suriname, which is near Guyana and Brazil, you know, Venezuela, all in that area in the northeast tip of South America, they were dying from a fever down there, like I was talking about before in the other video about quinine and hydroxy. That's a whole nother story, but they were having a lot of health issues and health problems, and the indigenous people already knew what to do to help, but they wasn't trying to help because they was the enemy. If your enemy is dying from nature, you don't help them. You let them go through the necessary process of nature. You just let it, hey, I didn't do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not about to intervene with the mother. So this guy named Quassia, what he did is he educated them on this particular bark and ended up saving that group of people. And then they took him back to Europe, and they ended up making a product out of it. And, you know, they praised him and everything. And they actually named the herb after him. So it's named Quassia because it's named after a brother named Quassia. Now, he got his ear cut off, just to let you know, from his brethren in Suriname, because they was like, you dumb mother, you told him? So yeah, they cut his ear off. I guess because he don't listen. They probably told him not to do it and he did. So when he came back, he got his ear chopped off. Small price to pay, you know what I'm saying? Given saving a bunch of enemies. But this, the same way that spicy foods have have a Scoville scale. Scoville units deal with how spicy something is. So like the scorpion pepper, the African bird pepper, habanero, Scotch bonnet, jalapenos, poblanos, all chiles, all those peppers have different Scoville units. And the higher the Scoville unit, the more spicy it is. The lower the Scoville unit, the less spicy it is. You know what I mean? So, you know, one type of pepper, one type of chili might be, you know, it'd be a little hot, but then you might deal with the scorpion pepper and you might want to take your life. You know what I'm saying? Because it's so damn hot. So quassia, or rather bitter herbs, have their own scale. And out of that scale, quassia is actually at the top. It is the most bitter substance on the earth. I mean, now I have not tasted every herb personally. I haven't studied every book to verify that, but if I'm wrong, it's definitely in the top 3, I would think. But you'll know the minute you take it just how bitter it is. And bitter is a necessary component when you're consuming food. We're so used to oil, we're so used to sweets, we're so used to sugar, we're so used to salty. We're not used to bitter. This is what the greens and the lettuce is for, because lettuce is usually bitter. Why is bitter necessary? Because bitter is part of our taste buds. Our taste buds represent one of the sensations, taste. Those are all sensations dealing with the nervous system. So it directly connects to our nervous system. So when our nervous system is able to detect bitter sensations, what it does is it lets our digestive system know, and that's what allows us to secrete a lot of alkalizing agents to make sure that if there's any acidic foods, or even if there's things that are semi-alkaline in there or low alkaline in there, it's going to alkalize them. It's going to kind of, you know, smooth the surface over and make sure that the substance that we're digesting is of an alkaline substance, and these are alkaline juices. So bitter is necessary for digestion. So that's why it's good to take your bitters. That's why it's good to eat salads. That's why it's good to eat bitter things throughout the day, like chocolate nibs. Not milk chocolate, not even just dark chocolate, but chocolate nibs are bitter. Dark chocolate is bitter. They're going to stimulate certain secretions inside of your body to help with your digestion. It's also going to help with your microbiome. So obra grande, this is a herb that Sebi used in a lot of his formulations. You'll see it as quasi, but if you go down in a lot of Spanish speaking countries, they're going to call it obra grande. And this is like one of the twigs off of it. So I would peel the skin off of it, I would peel that off, and then, you can cut it up and put it in a Vitamix to turn into powder, or you can get one of the pruning shears that has the 1 inch or 2 inch diameter that is built for, and you can cut them into little pieces, and then you can make up a tonic from it. But like I said, I'm forewarning you, like when I say bitter, it's that bitter like somebody took a paintbrush and dipped it into bitter paint and took that paintbrush and painted your tongue with the bitter paint. So no matter how much you scrape it or no matter what you do, it's on your tongue. It ain't going nowhere. It ain't going nowhere. You just gonna have to deal with it. You know what I'm saying? But it's necessary. It's necessary. So, we talked about cucumeca, we talked a little bit about the guaco, we talked about the horsetail, we talked about obra grande, we went into the water. So I just want to wrap it up to let y'all know, man, that we are like, these are like Gundam suits. These are like Voltron suits. These are like the Power Ranger Zord. Do you understand what I'm saying? And our consciousness is occupying this equipment, so you have to take care of your right arm, your left leg, your right leg, your knee, your liver, your pancreas, your spleen. All of these aspects of you need to be taken care of, and you do this by solar exposure. You do this through consuming water. You do this through grounding. You do this through positive thinking. You do this through reflection. You do this through meditation. You do this through getting sleep at night. You do this by getting up at a certain hour in the morning. You do this by catching the sunrise. You do this by taking your herbs. You do this by eating foods that you've grown or know who have grown them that are alive. You do this by cooking your food with spices and imparting them with the same love your mama used to put in your food that you can't get out of your mind. These are the things that assist in your health, and you have to keep it consistent to keep an optimum lifestyle. If you're living in a toxic environment, if you're in a toxic relationship, if you're dealing with poisonous people and toxins all day and all night long, then rest assured, I guarantee your body is breaking down. And you might be so numb because when a heavy metal concert is going on, it's very difficult for me to hear that my homeboy just came into the concert. He screamed, KT, KT, but it's, how I'm gonna hear him calling my name with all that going on? And that's what inflammation and the noise and the distractions is like in your body, as your body's screaming, KT, KT, you need to do this and that. But it's all that demonic ass heavy metal. Think about it. What they call it, heavy metal. What is chelation? Removing heavy metals from the body. You know what I'm saying? Dr. Sebi always talked about cellular chelation. He's talking about removing toxicities out of the cell. If you take your Dyson vacuum and you go to work in your cell, vacuuming up all the dirt and the shit in a cell, then what happens is the tissue is healed in proxy, organ healed in proxy, you are now healed. So go down to the atomic, go down to the molecular, go down to the cellular level. And if you do that, you'll get a greater response than if you do just going on some crazy diet that ain't worked for nobody. All right. My name is KT the Arch Degree. You'll find me on my website. That's where all my products are. On YouTube, KT the Arch Degree, Instagram, KT the Arch Degree. And if you want the most special and the greatest content, then you got to go to my Patreon, which is also KT the Arch Degree. Peace.